Oh, evening, folks. I'm a tired little ducky, so figured I'd go in and get some tanking done on a delve. Let's check the altar of corrosion for anything. Don't think there's anything. Like, God. So as usual, in doing a delve, I'm going to do a wee bit of bitching. Yeah, and yes, we'll just feed all this blah 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 blah. Let's activate some of these sentinels. So I am currently having what I would refer to as the Star Wars problem with this particular patch. Um, so, what is the Star Wars problem? The Star Wars problem is when you have an idea in your head of how you think something should be, and clearly because it's in your head, amongst other reasons, it is, in your opinion, the far, far more superior product. And I've been having this problem in many ways with, you know, Midnight in general. And my problem with it is not like the content itself or anything. I don't think it's bad. I don't even think the overarching story they've have is bad. What I do think is that we could have some actual bad guys, you know? Like, it, currently the closest thing we have to an actual bad guy has been like Decimus, who is unrepentantly just evil, comically so. Like he is comic book villain, and everybody loves him because who doesn't love a good comic book villain, right? And then on the other hand, you've got the rest of the storylines. Now, in War Within, you've got the spider people, which, we're opposed to, but it kind of makes sense simply because the spider people are self-serving. They're scheming, self-serving. They act within their own best interests. And, in this case, the best interest was that of, in particular, the reclamation of their kingdom. But, you know, they do still act in their best interest, in general. And now you've got the evil folks, which are, the Amani, but they can't be evil, and I don't expect them, like, evil might be, a very strong particular word here that doesn't really quite matter. Because here's the thing, the trolls have legitimate beef. Like, the entirety of the Eastern kingdoms, you know, um, north and probably south, honestly, pretty much everything but Lordaeron, maybe, is, you know, or at least used to be, these troll lands. They were at one point in time a fairly important, you know, settlements, huge chunks of empires. And it makes zero sense. Oh, for crying out loud, get over here. Okay, I need to update that. it makes absolutely no sense that we would be friends with them, that they would be okay with us at all. I mean, like, I'm not gonna be all one of these like Zul'jan did nothing wrong. My point is that Zul'jan was never given the opportunity to do wrong. Like, we could definitely have a, strong fight between, just Zul'jar and Zul'jan, where it's all about, you know, what is appropriate. You know, when you're facing something really horrible, as they are with the various void incursions that are coming through, and, whether or not it is appropriate to reach out to your cultural enemies. But, you know, instead it's, you know, gotten incredibly shonen. It's very anime. It's very, oh, power of friendship. No, no one's, there's no bad people. There's just people that have, you know, a rough time of it. And, you know, I get that. And in many ways, I consider that to be true. But at the same time, there's this thing where, there are resources, there are reasons for why people, fight. And it's not like, oh, it's in our nature, Piss of Pandaria. It's like, okay, you had all these refugees come, and this is not a, like, oh my god, refugees are bad or nothing, because, refugees often can assimilate into cultures. They do it all the time. They do it throughout America, they do it throughout Europe, they do it just about everywhere. But instead, you have, you know, people that basically are, straddling this fine line between refugees and colonizers. Technically, just about everyone in Azeroth except for the trolls are refugees in some very specific ways. I'm looking for treasure chests just on the fly. And so what I mean by that is you've got your humans, you know, landing in Tearsfall Glades and showing up after, in the Arathi Basin and the Arathi Highlands. And they're getting their butts whooped by the Amani. The Amani have an ancestral enemy in the form of the Blood Elves or High Elves. And, they very specifically have this enemy because, you know, again, these High Elves were refugees that settled into Quel'Thalas after, you know, the Well of Eternity took a shitter. So you've got all this going on. I don't need to be up there. And, you know, at no point did the Amani, like, I don't know enough about Warcraft history to really say, like, oh, well, these people definitely did this or these people definitely did that and there was diplomatic solutions. What I do know is the trolls eat people. I mean, it's literally like the throwaway gag for them is that the trolls eat people. Okay. And it's kind of hard to be nice neighbors with people that, eat eat you. Like, guess who's coming to dinner kind of deal. So there's legitimate reasons for the elves to be all like, no, I don't really feel like having all these trolls as my neighbors. Much the same way as there's very legitimate feelings on the part of the trolls of, hey, they've came in and they've stolen our homeland. You know, I'm not sure if I would equate all of this to possibly say like Israel and Palestine. There's certainly some feelings, at least in my mind, of it being very similar to that, but there's also a lot of feelings of it being very similar to um, oh, like Northern Ireland, you know, um, Sunni Shia conflict, you know, where there is a history of blood that makes it very, very difficult to get past. And, you know, to all appearances, at least Northern Ireland has, but there's a lot of other places where the only way that they have been able to escape this history is by fleeing the area, finding someplace new to be. And that's also not an uncommon story. You know, uh, like there's oh Irish people that come to the United States, they don't really worry about oh who's Catholic and who's Protestant anymore because it's far more important that they try and hold on to their Irish heritage. You know, Sunni and Shia coming. It's more important that they maintain a Muslim heritage than it is for them to maintain any sectarian conflict. When they have moved to the other areas. And, we see this actually play out in game with things like the Dark Spear Trolls, where, you know, there's a lot of throwaway lines, or at least used to be. I don't know. It's been a while since I've played a troll. Fun fact, oh no, Bruce wasn't a troll. I've got a few other characters that have been trolls, because trolls are pretty good DKs. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot of, you know, reasons for things to be the way they are. You know, things that make sense for why there's conflict. And the ways they groups can transcend those conflicts are typically by finding a new group or a way to separate themselves. And then you've got Zul'Jan, and he is making rational decisions, in my opinion, but he's also not given a chance to actually be a bad guy about them. Okay, do we got them all? Yep. Like he they make it so he's manipulated into his bad choices. And I would be far more interested in him just being allowed to be the bad guy, because he deserves to be the bad guy. He should be the bad guy. And I don't mean that in terms of like, oh, all trolls are evil. It's more that there is definitely, so much history here that, they should, you know, there's no way that he should not view his sister as anything but being a traitor to their heritage. even with bringing the Loa back. And meanwhile, he has some very, specific things, such as, just getting a hold of the lightwood, the only thing that's truly damaging all these, void guys. Like, that's entirely reasonable, and the elves literally are not trading for it. So, you know, I think that there was rooms for a story that could be had. And this story had teeth to it. And instead, we ended up with a story that was toothless. There is no real meat to be had in here. And there's no meat because they wrote it that way. They made it so uh, curious. Mastery, haste for still. Well, at least it'll let me upgrade it. So yeah, I think that there was room for a story that could have been told that was very interesting, and it's not there. And that combined with some very, shallow aesthetic things like, you know, here, like it's cool, it's troll themed. This, why aren't these troll skulls? You know, why aren't these troll skulls in there? You know, why aren't these, you know, something that really stands out and makes it trollish? You know, if we go to like the warrior, you know, this is a great set, but you know, I feel like it'd look a lot better if it was designed all around Nalarak and had like a bear mask and a bunch of other stuff like that. You know, um, do. Let's look at Druid here. Druid at least, matches up with the troll aesthetic. It's pretty woody, but So yeah, just I feel a little bit let down. And I know that this is a me problem, and that there's a lot of people that are really enjoying the storyline, and I don't mean to yuck anybody's yum. But there was something deeper to be had with an unrepentant Zul'Jan. There was something to be had where he is not manipulated, but joins Malacross because he feels that it's the right thing for the Amani to do. And there was a dichotomy they could have had with Zul'Jara losing her arm, much the same way that her grandfather lost his arm, you know, with both of them cutting it off. And in his case, Zul'jin cuts it off to escape the Blood Elves and to start the Amani uprising, to basically try and build an army in Zulaman to try and take back Quel'Thalas. Because they've been fighting forever. And there could have been symbolism with Zul'Jara by separating her arm that is poisoned. It's poisoned by the past, and she is separating herself from that past and having to give up her brother, who is trying to embrace that past. That would have been beautiful. That would have had meat. That would have had teeth to it. Instead, we've got crazy marshmallow story that really it's not something terrible, but it is not something strong. And I love marshmallows. Big fan of them. Great for s'mores. But sometimes I want a steak. And this could have been steak. They could have had depth to it, especially for them, especially in comparison to so much of the storyline that they have in game going right now, where, so much of it is just Azeroth coming together. And it's beautiful that Azeroth is coming together, but humanity has this thing where even in the face of great destruction and whatnot, like, we're still human, we're still angry, we're still petty, and we're allowed to be that. And the game should express that we have grudges and that some grudges are valid. Anyway, that's enough of me whining. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I'm gonna go try and find a dungeon. Bye.